Your mask could
I could get in another one.
Tune in to UFO Undercover, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, with your host, Joe Montaldo, right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
Welcome to another episode of The Dawn of Shades. I'm your host, Gia Scott, and today is June 28th, 2011, and this is episode 514. More about this program and the guests that have provided us with such fascinating conversations can be found on our website, www.exogenynetwork.com. The Dawn of Shades always tries to bring interesting people right to the audience to hear about both new and old ideas. We focus on the people, places, and ideas that don't always make the mainstream news, the kinds of things that are frequently labeled as alternative or paranormal. For the show tonight, if you would like to have a question asked, you can email it to me at giascott@exogenynetwork.com or send it to the virtual auditorium on Paltalk by text. I do monitor the email during the program, so if you're listening outside of the virtual auditorium and would like to have a question answered, you can email it to me and I'll get it asked for you. In the virtual auditorium, remember, just put it into text, and I'll try and catch it as the screen scrolls. And if I don't catch it the first time, feel free to repeat it again. Now, for those of you listening in on a podcast, you can go ahead and email me as well. I'll try and get your questions answered for you, too. If you would like to call in and ask your question over the air, you may call us at 504-273-7379. Once again, that number is our calling number, and it is 504-273-7379. For those of you who like to feel connected, you can find me on Facebook and on Twitter, so you can link to me there. There's also Dawn of Shades fan page on Facebook, so you can look to that as well. For the readers, campers, and foodies, check out the articles and blogs. You might find some material that just might interest you. Now, tonight's program is a kind of special program, and we're joined by both Washali and Phyllis King for the program. Washali will only be with us for a brief period of time if she's recovering from a procedure that's temporarily impaired her ability to talk, so she has joined me anyhow for my announcement tonight. Just over 3 years ago, I made the announcement on the air that I had become engaged. That night, Washali was my guest. Now, 3 years may seem like a very long engagement to some, but the time was actually flown by for us, and Gregory and I have finally chosen a date to make our marriage official and legal and share a great gathering with our friends and family members. We're planning a unique and fun wedding, and as part of my lucky charms for it, I wanted Washali to join us again for this announcement. So, Washali, how does it feel to be a lucky charm, sort of rabbit's foot on the hoof?
It reminds me of that commercial. Everyone's always after me, Lucky Charms.
yeah. Well, I did kind of wheedle you into going ahead and coming on even for just a few minutes with your mouth so sore. So I am glad.
I did want to take a moment, sweetheart, and just speak for the whole listening audience to say that we are just so happy for you and Greg, and we wish you every conceivable, imaginable, normal, and paranormal blessing and happiness there is to be found in the known and unknown universe, and hopefully I think I covered it all there.
Yeah, we could go a little bit low on the paranormal sort of stuff, though, because, you know, that's sort of a mixed thing, you know, and we already have quite a lot of that on our plate, you know. We could do it a little less paranormal sometimes, but I guess beggars can't be choosers, right?
Well,
so we have planned a fun wedding. We are doing a hippie wedding. Hopefully on the beach. We're looking to confirm exactly where. Hopefully over the coming month we'll get that confirmed. But we want to do it on the beach. And complete with hippie costumes and the whole bit. We're not even calling it a reception, it's a gathering. We're not doing paper invitations, we're being very, very clean. Everybody gets a verbal or email invitation. No paper invitations. I guess we're old enough to realize that packing around all these keepsakes gets a little heavy with time. So, no paper invitations, no formal stuff at all. Nobody has to dress up. And everybody can outfit themselves from a local thrift store if they don't have it in their closet, right?
I would imagine that everybody's got something creative in their closet for a creative event like yours.
Yeah, I have to admit it was kind of different. I had originally suggested that we did, like, you know, Renaissance outfits, and Greg was looking over my shoulder at some of the costume patterns that were available because I do sew, and I could make it for him. And, you know, I don't know if it was the codpiece, the breeches, the tights, ruffles on the shirt. Something didn't quite jive with his psyche. He said, oh, no. Yeah, so we opted for hippie.
Well, I think you'll both look stunning in tie-dye.
I guess I wasn't really particularly worried about it. I don't know for sure what I'm going to wear yet. I've not chosen whatever it is I'm going to wear. Nothing has said, this is it, quite yet. So I'm sure I'll find something.
Will you take pictures and post them on your website?
Oh, of course. And I'm hoping to twist your arm and get you to sort of make a halfway trip around the Gulf Coast from your place to your honey's place, and you can, like, stop off and hang out with us.
Yeah, let me know. I'm looking forward to it, honey. I would love to come in and make a purple appearance.
We would certainly love to have you show up. Actually, the date is October 29th. It's going to be a Saturday. We're going to do the afternoon thing. Statistically, the weather should be beautiful. We all know statistics and Mother Nature not always on speaking terms. So we will have some canopies there, but we're just asking everybody to have a talk with Mother Nature and say, please don't rain that afternoon and evening. We just assume skip the rain. It would be much easier without rain involved. And should there be a nice breeze coming in off the Gulf, some of the locations we've looked at. You may not have the gorgeous white sands that some of Florida is famous for, but it's very Mississippi-ish and should be an excellent place for everybody to have fun, whether they want to play in the water and get the skirt wet or not. Yeah. So it should be a lot of fun.
We wish you so much happiness, sweetheart.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm anticipating our wedding being just as much fun as most of our life is. Not to say that we always are a barrel of monkeys and ha-has, but we do certainly have interesting times together, and usually are on the same page of the book. And if not, we're usually at least in the same chapter, which helps. Yeah, further navigation isn't necessary.
Are you accepting wedding gifts?
Yeah, we will accept wedding gifts. It isn't something that we're asking anybody to do, but yeah, we do.
Okay, excellent. Just thought I'd put that out there because I know I'd like to send you something and just wanted to make sure that was the appropriate etiquette.
Yeah. We have many friends and family that we know won't be able to make it, and in fact, my own sister is going to not be in the United States, and she'll be in Singapore, so she won't be able to come. She has some serious health issues, and travel is difficult with her to begin with, And she says, I've just left the U.S. to go back after her daughter's wedding, which is next month. And she says, I won't be able to travel back that soon. It's too hard on her. So she won't be able to make it, but I'm sure she will enjoy the pictures and everything's the same. So I'm crossing my fingers that my mother will make it. She's supposed to be here then, so barring creek rising and all that kind of good stuff, she will be here. It'll be a lot of fun, you know, have some family, have some friends, and I happen to choose the Gulf Coast to live on, which means I'm like in the middle of nowhere. My granddaughter will be there, though. She'll have just turned a year old, so she should be just at the right stage to have lots of fun with chocolate and sand. Yeah, so that'll be fun, too. Babies are a lot more fun when somebody else is their mom. Yeah. So anyhow, yeah, we're really looking forward to it. And, of course, men just don't seem to be as much into the whole thing. Greg kind of rolls his eyes and tells me whatever I want, except tights and cod pieces and frilled shirts. He did draw the line there. But, you know, that's okay, too. So anyhow, that is our special announcement that we have been waiting to make until we could get Washali on here.
Yay!
Yeah.
And
I thank you very much for coming and joining us tonight, long enough for our little announcement.
Thank you, sweetheart, and please pass on my congratulations to Greg. And I'm sure that when the moment comes, he'll get caught up in the excitement.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's excited too, but men, I don't think, find the nuts and bolts of the whole thing quite as intriguing as women, perhaps. And we're very fortunate. A friend of ours is going to officiate. So the ceremony isn't going to be your cut and paste, you know, everybody in the state gets the same thing. It'll actually be for us. And that's special, too.
Yeah.
You know, rather than a generic ceremony. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. We're excited. And I was hoping to bring her on, too, but she got blessed with a winter cold. I'm starting to wonder, was me in this announcement somewhat cursed?
Well, we're getting it over with so that we'll be in good shape when your event comes.
Yeah, that's kind of what I regarded. You know, Mr. Murphy's little quirks are all coming out now, and that's a good thing. We have plenty of time to recover, revamp, and come up with plans B, C, D, E, F, and G if we need to. And so, we're moving on from the wedding now to our program tonight. We are fortunate enough to be joined by Phyllis King, who is known as the Common Sense Psychic. Now, Phyllis, could you be so kind as to introduce yourself to the audience?
Hello, audience. I'm Phyllis King, and I am your Common Sense Psychic, and I'm very happy to be here. It's my first time and to share space for a few moments with someone who I love so dearly, Washali, despite the condition of your throat.
You guys have a great evening. I know that everybody's going to have so much fun with Phyllis, and I'm going to bow out now, and you guys get ready to call in because you're going to want to talk to Phyllis tonight. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Love to you.
And I hope you get your mouth feels better tomorrow.
Me too.
Definitely, most assuredly, she gets the feeling better. So, what is a common sense psychic, Phyllis?
Well, I love the practical and I love the spiritual. You know, I love everything esoteric, everything energy, everything unseen and intangible. But at the same time, I do have a human body, as do most of my clients, and they're kind of concerned about what's happening in their everyday lives, as am I. And so I love that whole relationship about how does spirit and physical interact together. And it's kind of a long story how the name came about to be a Common Sense Psychic, but suffice it to say I had a different name, and when I went on hiatus when my first child came along, someone partook of my domain name, And so I really couldn't go back to that name. They wanted to charge me an arm and a leg. And I had to do a radio show, and I got on the air, and it was the first time after being back from being a mom, and it just kind of came out of my mouth that I'm the Common Sense Psychic, and it just kind of fits who I am. So that's sort of the long and the short version of what's a Common Sense Psychic.
Well, it makes absolute sense to me. Many of us have lost domains because, oops, we forgot to pay that.
Yeah, darn.
15 minutes past the deadline, and somebody in China now owns it.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I should be flattered that they think I am so successful that, millions of people are going to be hitting my website, I suppose. But, all things take their perfect and right form, and I changed a lot after becoming a mom, as every person does, every parent does. They change a lot, so it was appropriate, all good and perfect.
Well, I find that as we progress through life, we go through many phases. We talk about the phases of children, but many people don't recognize the phases of adulthood either. And they are just as distinct as those of a child, really.
Yes.
I really found that turning 40 meant incredible freedom.
Yes.
And I turned 50 this year, and I'm anticipating even more freedom. And it's different phases in our life. At 40, I still had, some need, I guess, to conform. At 50, I'm like, Katie, bar the door. I don't need to conform to anything, honey.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I'm starting a new hobby, too. I'm 50 years old. I've never had an interest in my life in mechanics. In fact, for 25 years, I did not even ride a bicycle. I had a bicycle crash that resulted in a trip to the emergency room. A dog had come running out after me, tried to grab my leg, and in the process of getting away from the dog, of course, I ended up road rash. Anyhow, so for 25 years, I basically did not ride bike. Occasionally, I'd borrow my kids' bike because they were sure that there's no way I could ride. They'd never seen me ride one. So once a decade or so, I'd borrow it and go to the post office or something. But I didn't ride a bike. Last year, I got a bicycle. Now, with age, we discover things like we don't work as good as we used to. Our mind still does. Mind still thinks we should. But you go to move, and it's like, where is that leg? It's behind me still. We just don't heal as quickly. We don't move as quickly. And that further, faster thing, I was like, okay, I'm wearing out before I, get too terribly far. Or I'm afraid I'm going to wear out and won't be able to get home. Neither one I could do such fun bicycling. I was looking on the internet one night, and lo and behold, I see these motors to put on bicycles. And I was like, here's the best of both worlds. I can ride my bike, and when I get tired, it rides it for me. So tomorrow my new motor kit for a bicycle is supposed to arrive.
Nice.
And I'm going to install a motor on a bicycle. Now, granted, for about what ultimately it'll cost to do this project, I could buy one pre-done. But these two-cycle motors happen to require a lot of tinkering with, and I figured if I was going to have to tinker with it to make it go, I should know what a carburetor was and what it looked like, and I should know where the fuel petcock valve is and what it looks like. The easiest way to do that is simply sit down with the directions in the video and do it myself. By the time I get done, I'll know how to make it go.
Wow, well, good for you. I'm sure you will.
So that's a 50-year-old woman's new hobby. I didn't forget cross-stitch. I did that a long time ago. That was boring. Motors, bicycles, yeah!
Yeah, I love it.
Yep, that's the new hobby. So everybody thinks I'm nuts, but that's what I decided I wanted to try doing now.
Well, that's pretty much, you're assured you're on the right track if everybody thinks you're nuts. You're doing something important.
Yeah, well, they thought I was many times doing things that were nuts. Sometimes they were right. Sometimes maybe it wasn't the best choice, but it seemed like the best choice that I could make at the time. When you're choosing between a rock and a hard place and a rocky spot, yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, like I tell my daughter, kids don't come with owner spaniels, and one doesn't arrive in the mail later either.
Mhm.
So sometimes your choices may not make sense to anyone else. They make sense to you sometimes. Maybe sometimes they don't. You just choose on the fly. You know? Yeah. But yeah, they don't arrive with owner's manuals, and I think she's begun to really see the point. My granddaughter's 8 months old. And,
oh yeah, she's starting to get wind of it.
Yeah. So I'm anticipating the next 18 years with my granddaughter as being so much fun for me.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be.
My mother always said a child gives her mother 10 times what she gave her mother, and oh boy, is my daughter in for some fun. Yeah, I kept teasing her before the baby was born. I said, you got to name her Revenge. She didn't feel so funny.
Cute.
Yeah. So, you know, in terms of what you do and being a common sense psychic, you know, I've talked to many other kinds of psychics, you know, ranging from those who use tarot cards to those who use various other tools. Do you use any kind of a tool to help you?
Well, how I tune into someone's energy is through their name, their first name. That's just how my switch flips. Didn't always work that way. I mean, I had a lot of spontaneous experiences happen throughout my life, meaning seeing dead people, having a lot of precognitive experiences, seeing a lot of stuff that you don't ordinarily see in a normal state of consciousness. And so I sort of put myself on a path to just self-discovery to say, you know, what is this stuff? Why me? And how does it fit into the grand scheme of life, to God, to universe? And so I've been on a pretty long journey, my whole life pretty much. And so there was a period of time when my early 20s when I used tarot cards. They really helped me focus, and I could do it on call as opposed to just have it happen to me. And then through other processes, those became more of a hindrance to me, and I just really like just having a vast landscape to pull information from. And so I've been reading by just reading energy through a person's name for, 25 years at this point. And it works for me. I love it that way. And so even if 5 people call the show and they all have the same name, Susan, you know, I don't know why, but their information just downloads to me. I can't quite figure it out. It's just how it works for me.
Well, maybe somehow there's something connected to their name that says, this is the Susan, you know, that I am, or whatever.
Yeah, because I certainly have lots of clients that have the same name, but, you know, who knows? It works for me, and, you know, everybody has their message, and that's mine.
Yeah. And, you know, when you talk about spontaneous psychic experience, I guess, you know, the first thing that came to my mind was the experience I had. I was out with some friends. We had been doing some sky watching because I know a number of people who are serious about UFOs and aliens and related phenomena. And we were out by the water, and I was leaning up against the truck and just kind of zoning, not really thinking about anything. Everybody else was off doing something, whatever. And I was just leaning against the truck, kind of zoning. And it was like all of a sudden there was some sort of a time shift, and I was seeing the same scene at some different time period. The trees were all moved, the things were gone, and other things were there, and it was kind of a weird, because the people were gone too. I mean, it was kind of a weird, startling sort of thing to be looking at all of a sudden. As a complete change in the shoreline. I mean, it was like, whoa, what happened here? You barely recognize it as the same place. And, you know, in the course of the next half hour, I learned, you know, you can almost switch back and forth. I could flip back to where I was and then back to wherever this was. And so it kind of became a curiosity, and I was like, I don't know what I was looking at. I don't know what purpose it would ever serve, but it was kind of strangely bizarre and interesting at the same time.
Yeah, I should say.
I would say I really don't have, you know, any psychic tendencies myself, but, you know, I have had a large number of what you call paranormal events in my life, ranging from ghostly encounters to things that have been mentally filed in my weird file. I have my fat mental weird file.
Your weird file, I like that. Well, for me, it's all, psychic is a broad term, and it tends to cover everything for me because there's so much energy on the word. It covers, For me, when I was like 5 years old, I started seeing formless shapes fly around my house, things of this nature. Noticing entities around me, and I've had other friends who they've called these floaters. Then I started having astral projection and out-of-body experience probably around age 5 and 6, where, I could be in one place, people I know or whatever would be in another, and I could know what they're talking about verbatim. And a lot of these things I never spoke about. I didn't know what psychic was, and I was raised in a pretty religious family, so I don't know, I just knew not to bring these things up. And then, of course, I started having a lot of precognitive experiences through dreams in my teenage years. I'd just go to sleep, wake up, and my dream would transpire within 24 to 48 hours. And that was actually kind of cool. I liked that feeling of being connected to life in that way. But it was when a friend of mine who passed away in a car accident showed up in my house. That kind of rocked my world, and I finally said, all right. What is this?
Yeah.
So, I guess that's paranormalish when you talk ghosts or whatnot, but, that was sort of my beginnings.
I have, knowing a number of people that are strongly psychic, but I would say they don't feel as though they have control over it. And trying to imagine, if you're doing this for a living, you need to have control over it because you've got to be able to access it on demand. And, there's a big gap between being able to do it spontaneously and being able to do it on demand. How do you start to bridge that?
Well, this is what I teach a lot of psychic development courses, and one of the things that always amazes me is that oftentimes beginners are some of the most powerful psychics because their antennae are just like out there on receive, and they blow my mind with some of the stuff they do. But the things they teach right away are, first you make your body let's call it a clean vehicle, a clean mechanism. You learn how to ground your body. You learn how to run energy, because really what you're doing is learning how to interpret information through your mechanism. And then you kind of have to get a sense of what your mechanism is. Am I visual? Am I auditory? Am I sensory? Am I a combination of both? Because everybody can receive it differently. So once you kind of figure out how to make your body safe and how to control your area so you can let in what you want and keep out what you don't want, it just becomes a process of practice at that point. And I have folks in my psychic development class, they're reading by the 4th week of class, and they're doing it on call. And it's really a joy to watch. I love doing that work.
Yeah, that would be pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Do you find that there's a great deal of variation in natural ability? And is natural ability a real critical thing, or is it something that almost everybody can develop to use?
Well, I think we all have it. I think it depends on how bad you want it, and B, how interested you are in it. And typically, the greater your interest, typically the more natural ability you tend to have. I'm not going to find people enrolling for my class who have no interest or haven't had any experiences. And pretty much within short order, most people reveal themselves. It's clear that they're more a medium, or they're more auditory, or they're more sensory. It makes itself evident right away as you start to employ a few, tools and, things that, it just makes it apparent. So it's not necessarily rocket science. There's just a lot of practice involved in terms of recognizing your own signals. And, a lot of times people, I just have to deprogram them from when they come into class and say, what are your expectations? What do you think a psychic is? Because they might be trying to be what someone else thinks they should be. Oh, I saw this psychic on TV, and this is what she's doing or he's doing. and maybe that is or isn't right for that person. So sort of deprogramming from what culture or mainstream society has told you a psychic is also part of the process. Mm-hmm. But I think anybody, we all have it. We all came to this planet with sensory perception, extrasensory on some level, and just about how bad you want it and how important it is to you to own it. Well, I can tell you some of these Psychic Development 1 students blow my mind. Oh, my God, these people come into class and, I don't know if I can do it, Phyllis. And then on week 3 or 4, they're just like doing the most amazing things. And it just goes to show that's some pretty serious talent.
One thing that I've often heard say is not a psychic talent, yet I try to understand how it could not be, is remote viewing. Do you regard that as something that's done via psychic ability, or is it something that is much more clinical and scientific and whatnot?
I personally feel that it's psychic. I mean, that's a spontaneous experience that I had as a child. I didn't know anything about it. I just did it. I didn't know what I was doing. I just did it. So I think it's part of the package. But, I'm glad that science can recreate some of the things we do, if it's possible. Science can't validate a lot of what we do, but if they can make that happen, cool.
Well, I was curious. There's I forget his name right now. He was a general or some sort of military title. Anyhow, he's often talked about the military's remote viewing project. And he says, no, it's not a psychic thing. Anybody can do it. And I'm like, you know what? If it's not psychic, what is it? It's not exactly like it's, you plug a wire in the guy's head. Major Ed Dames, thank you, Nye Lilly from the Virtual Auditorium. He's the one that's often said that, I'm like, how could it not be a psychic ability to do this? How else could it be done? I couldn't figure out a way. I've never heard him answer the question as to, if it's not psychic, what is it? But he's often said it's not psychic, it is something that anybody can do. And I'm like, well, everybody has some psychic ability, so logic says that...
Exactly.
It's just like everybody has the ability to walk to one degree or another. Some of us didn't run in the Olympics, and some of us are doing good across the road.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I don't know how you couldn't do it if you don't have either your clairvoyant piece intact or at least your ability to trust and sense what you're seeing and feeling. I just can't imagine how it would be created under any other circumstance.
I couldn't figure out any other method it could be conducted. I mean, it absolutely makes no sense to me. It has to be a psychic thing. Yeah. Apparently,
and I can't imagine the military could condone any form of psychic whatever. They couldn't.
That's probably why they said it wasn't psychic.
Yeah.
That way it was acceptable, because it's well known and documented they did have a remote viewing project. Whether they do still or not is up in the air, but at least at one point they did. And they were conducting active experiments with it. They were having some success with it. If it's not psychic, what is it? Well, they didn't like the psychic idea. So it's not psychic. It's something else. It's remote viewing. Yeah.
Oh, that is very funny.
Yeah, well, I guess it's par with the military and their $200 hammer. So, it's got to be good, right?
Yes, yes.
So besides teaching other people how to use their psychic abilities, what other kinds of things do you do?
Well, I teach life mastery courses and in 6-week and 12-week increments. And, because one of the things that when I became a professional psychic, I started doing a lot of copying other famous psychics who are really rich. Because I'm like, I'm going to do what they're doing and then I'll get really rich, right? Well, and so I do things like giving names and numbers and street names, and I got really good at it. And I thought, okay, this is good, but I found it very empty for me personally. So I told you something that stimulated you for a moment. So what? So I thought, well, what's made the difference for me in my life? And that has been learning about what my purpose is on the planet. What am I doing here? What the hell am I doing here? What's going on? Why am I bumping up against all these various experiences, whatever? And so I became fascinated with looking at people's life themes, their core issues, and that's always the first part of my readings on the phone or in person, so I can start to see who this person is as a spirit, not just as a body. And that's how I receive people's impressions. So from that standpoint, my business began to change from just being a traditional psychic to, also sort of delineating people's experiences spiritually. Because, along my personal quest to say, what is this psychic stuff, it was like, well, what does it mean in the grand scheme? So it's for my personal consumption as well. And then I found during my readings, I couldn't just say, yes, this relationship is going to work or not. I had to tell them why or what they could do to make things different. So I've studied with a lot of various teachers, not the least of which is the wonderful Washali, and she and I do a lot of workshops and such together now, but I really like her information as well. And so I've developed my own program over a number of years, and the Life Mastery course helps people move beyond, the limitations in their space, whether it's in abuse, whether it's to have relationship troubles or finance troubles or whatever family troubles, whatever the ordeals are. The solution is always the same, and helping people shift their perspective is really wonderful work for me. So that's pretty much what I do, the classes and psychic development, and then I still do one-on-one readings. I still love that.
Just out of curiosity, how in 6 or 12 weeks can you teach Life Mastery? I know people that have gone nearly 60 years and haven't mastered anything.
That's a great question, actually. They haven't mastered their life, but what everybody gets is their pieces are on the table. A lot of times people have lived asleep in their lives, and so I get them awake so they can see what is working in their lives, so they can see what influences are going on, and they can take ownership of it, and they can be in the driver's seat rather than having life happen to them. So everybody who comes to me gets that piece. And, different people, some people continue on and, go more than 12 weeks or whatnot, but they get their pieces, and they get a big chunk of perspective shift. And that's a good beginning for a lot of folks. And then are you going to continue it from there? And are you going to do it on your own with me or with someone else? Or, it's just a good foundation and starting place for a lot of people. And I do have some clients who are really high functioning, and they just come to me to kind of kick it up and get it to another level. So not everybody who comes to me is broken and in a bad state.
Okay. Do you ever have unwilling people come into your class? Ones that somebody else is dragging, kicking, and screaming.
Those are my favorite ones. Usually, I don't have it often, but say I do group reading events also where, there'll be 30 or 35 people who come and I read everyone in the room. And someone might come with a spouse or a friend who just tagged along. And sometimes those are the most fun people, or by the end of the event, they're really interested. I had a woman show up in my office and brought her husband with her, and he sat there most of the time with his arms crossed until about 40 minutes into the reading. Then he started asking questions, and then about a week after the reading, he called me up and hired me to consult for his investment firm. It's just fun how things work out. So, I just look at it as an opportunity to bring information to whoever is sitting in front of me.
Most people that I know that could really use some Life Mastery classes are the least likely to seek help for themselves. They absolutely believe there's nothing wrong. Why fix what's not broken? They don't see the breaks. They don't see the problem because to them it's just fine. So I was just wondering, do other people ever drag people in, literally?
Well, not mine because, my course is, you got to pay. There's not, and I'm not charging people to gouge people, but I think that when people plunk down some money, they're investing in themselves, and that they want to get something from it. And most people who would take my Life Mastery course, for instance, they know they've either listened to my radio shows or been to group reading events or heard of me in some way. They check me out, and they know how it goes for me. They're not going to step into it unless they kind of know what I'm about. And then, there's other people who've heard about it. I always do a 30-minute consultation for free for people. Gives them an opportunity to experience what's going to happen as they step into the energy. But rarely does anybody come to my class who doesn't want to be there. I think more in a group reading event where it's more of a lighter format. You get a broader range of people who might think, be more skeptic or whatnot.
Yeah. And we do have a question from the virtual auditorium which kind of takes us back a little bit. So the question is, in order to develop a specific psychic ability, such as psychometry or precognition, do you have to practice the specific ability, or can you practice any of them and wind up developing any or all of them?
Yes to both questions. You really do need to practice the one thing to get, like when I used to always get names and dates, I was really practicing getting names and dates. I used to just really do that, and so when I talk to my client, who's Emily, and does she live on, Anderson Street, and, is she living in North Dakota? And I would try and just right off the bat give a lot of specificity in that type of dialogue. Now, since I'm not as concerned with it, it'll still come, but, that's not the information I'm going for. So you can train your intuition to do what you want with it. But the more you open your channels and the more you work your psychic quote-unquote muscle, it'll all come. The whole gig to psychic reading is you ask a question, you wait for the answer. And it doesn't matter what area you're doing it in. You ask and you wait for the answer, and it's pretty much that easy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You didn't know
I'm going to
that,
ask you a question that's, easy is relative. Here's a question that's not specifically related to what you do, but it's one that I've often mulled over, and I've asked other people, too, for some clarification. When I'm talking to people, I will talk to people who say, I channel, and I'll talk to other people who say, I'm a psychic medium. Now, what is the difference between channeling and receiving information psychically?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, to me, when I'm channeling, I'm actually bringing in an entity into my body. I do not channel. I mean, not never, but rarely will I ever channel. I don't want anybody in my body. I don't want any entities in my body. No, thank you. But I do medium work, and then I am connecting to the essence and the consciousness of that deceased person. And that has a very different feel to me than channeling or psychic reading.
Okay.
So that's how it is for
now,
me.
Now that creates a clearer picture in my mind. In the case of channeling, they're actually inside of you. As a medium, you got a pipe connecting you. And, as a psychic medium, they're hollering down the tube.
I like that. Yeah, good.
Well, yeah, I like really visual things, and the simpler they are, when we all have things happen to us that there's no rhyme or reason, it's just one of these crazy things that happen. Well, I blame it all on the ladies of fate. Now, the ladies of fate, you know who the red hat ladies are, in their red hats and their purple dresses and red shoes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, imagine them on crack, okay? They've got really wild clothes. Bright red lipstick, loud eyeshadow, big gaudy earrings. Yeah, lots of rings on their fingers and bells on their toes. Yeah, blue hair, the whole bit. There's 12 of them up there in that jury box, okay? Just like those Ironside programs, there's a jury box up there in the cloud somewhere. And they're up there cackling their head off, looking down at me and throwing whatever it is at me.
I love it.
That's my lady's face. That's who I blame for all the goofy, crazy, inconvenient, aggravating things that happen in life. The lady's face. Other people blame Mr. Murphy. No, ladies' face up there cackling like crazy. Yeah, old ladies on crack.
That's great.
I love imagery. You know, I really do. Yeah. I'm really good at it. Okay, I have to admit. Not every mind can cook up these ladies up there in that jury box with the ironclad program.
That's true.
Right?
I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, the scary thing is I do all this stuff, and I'm not using anything more fascinating to drink than some spiced chai or maybe some coffee if it's a heavy-duty day.
Yeah.
Yeah, who needs drugs? They got me.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, you know, I do like imagery. I like to create simple images to explain complex ideas, and then of course I have the Lady's Fate, which is my comic relief. It's like the little guy Fear. Okay, Fear is a big boogeyman that most people would know. For me, Fear is a little green guy, and he sits on my shoulder, and he's kind of hairy and lumpy and bumpy and got warts and stuff. And he always sits on my shoulder and he whispers. Now, sometimes he's just, you know, being a sort of pain in the butt, but other times he's telling me to pay attention to things for good reason, you know. Don't jump off that bridge. The water is deep down there. That's good reason. There's a good reason to be afraid. Don't go there because you might meet a stranger. No, that's a stupid reason, you know. So you have to pick and choose what you listen to with the little guy. But I tell everybody the day that Fear's not sitting on my shoulder whispering in my ear, that's the day I should be really afraid because he got up and left. Yeah, I use imagery in every facet of my life, right down to Fear has got a little cartoonish character, with green, lumpy, bumpy, warts, fur, scales. He's got it all. Yep, if I was to become a psychic, I'd have to be the cartooning psychic. Never mind, I can't draw one, really.
Well, he's certainly very likely clairvoyant.
But that's my characters of life, yeah. Everybody else has imaginary friends. I have imaginary pseudo-friends, sort of enemies. Never know what they're going to do. Like the green guy on my shoulder and the ladies in the jury box. Yeah. And if I want somebody to talk to that I know will never ever repeat any of it to anybody else, Red Dog has been my buddy for years. Yeah, I know I can trust her with my secrets too. Yeah, she's listened to many of the years.
Yeah.
And I've learned to listen to her. People who say that dogs can't talk have never spent time in close quarters with one over a long period of time. Dogs tell you a lot.
Absolutely.
When I was single and dating, if I listened to her, I would have never had some of the terrible dating experiences I had.
Well, now you've learned.
Yeah, now I've learned. Red had better sense than I did. Yeah. Oh, she adored Greg from the minute she saw him. But, you know, yeah, she's done terrible things to people like guys I was dating.
Wow.
Which indicated, you know, she never did anybody, but it indicated that some of them weren't too bright. Like the one guy, she rammed him with her front feet. Now, she's a large dog. She's, well, in her youth, she was 70, 80 pounds. And roughly the size of a collie, but much bulkier, broader and everything. She hit him with her front feet and knocked him about 8-10 feet back into a wall. Wow. And Mr. Rocket Scientist stands up after he picks himself up, after he slid down the wall. He said, "Did she do that on purpose?" And I'm kind of wondering why he would ask such a thing if she did that on purpose. So what his offense was he got too close to me. She didn't like it, obviously. And so he did it again, so she did it again. And he concluded that, yes, she did it on purpose. And I concluded, you know, not only does he talk too much, but he's dumber than a box of rocks. So we didn't go out with him again.
Well, I would listen to my animal, that's for sure. Animals have incredible intelligence, and they speak an amazing language, so I listen.
You know, I don't know if dogs are, in general, all psychic or not. If they sense things on a different level than we do, how they know the things that they do. But my daughter swears that Red communicates with her in dreams. And, often in the past years, I've had her call me up and say, such and such is going on, and Red Dog's concerned about it. And I'm like, huh? How did you know? I mean, at that time, she lives halfway across the country from me. How did you know that's going on?
I've had a lot of animal communication through dreams.
Yeah, the dog told me. She actually refers to the dog as her sister. My sister told me. Yeah, so obviously Red Dog has pretty high status in our family anyhow. My daughter refers to my sister. But, and I'm like, there's no way she could have known it any other way. I mean, absolutely not. How I was feeling emotionally, because there's some things you don't tell your daughter, adults or not. And how I was feeling emotionally, whether I was feeling very, very stressed out, how I was feeling about a relationship, whatever it was that was bothering the dog would tell my daughter, who did call me on the phone. And I'm like, dog, you could have just told me,
Wow, yeah.
But, I found that a fascinating thing on occasion. Mm-hmm. Do you often have experiences where animals communicate with you?
Well, I talk to my animal. I only have one animal right now, but people have me talk to their animals. I mean, in the context of a reading. And like you were talking about your daughter, and I have had amazing experiences in a sleep state or partial sleep state, receiving information from an animal, and it's really advanced. And I think that they're just, they're not playing the game of the human experience the way we are, and so they can just say what consciousness is and is saying to us. So I've just found it really amazing, and some of the things I've experienced with animals over the years has blown my mind, actually. So I have a lot of respect for animals, and I'm a huge animal advocate, and but mostly at this point, just for the conditions of my life, I have children, so I don't have a lot of room for animals, but people do ask me about their pets.
Yeah, we were just joined by our third rescue dog. He showed up at my daughter's house, a Chihuahua. And after he hung around all day and we finally coaxed him to come into us and eat, we noticed he was extremely skinny and was covered in fleas and ticks, had no collar, and then we started looking for his home. And we never found one, and I said, well, we can't just leave him to be eaten by something or run over by a car. So now we have 3 dogs and 2 cats, and just the 2 of us, and we're being outvoted.
That's a house full.
Yeah, we have a very small house, so, and we have 2 dogs that cannot be put together at all, ever.
Okay.
So that makes life even more entertaining because everything has to be done in a certain order, so that Sissy, the Feist, can't get near. Well, she actually can't get near anybody because she just has issues, I guess. She's my challenge child. After all these years, she still doesn't get it on a lot of things, and she doesn't learn new things very easily. And so we just accept that Sissy has some limits and work around them. She will never shut up. So if you need her to shut up, you've got to put her where she can't see anything. Because if she can see anything, she's losing her vision now, so it's a lot of shadows, I think, to her. And so everything looks like a boogeyman. And, if she sees anything, then it's yap, 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 and nonstop. And that really can annoy people quickly, and she wears out her welcome quickly. But she is, she's a sweetheart within her parameters, and she is our challenged one. Nemo's our newest one, and he's only been with us about 6 weeks now, I guess. So his personality is still coming out, you might say, as we get to know him. He actually acquired his name because my mother and my granddaughter were watching Nemo, the cartoon, when. So that's how he got his name. We usually call him the little guy. He's way smaller compared to everybody else. Yeah, he's smaller than the cats even. I have a cat that looks like a bowling ball with fur on it. Looks like that for years. A calico bowling ball, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I know on your website you've had Karen Anderson on the show, and she's one of my favorite folks, and I love her book, Hear All Creatures, and she definitely gets it right when it comes to talking to animals.
We've had a number of animal psychics come on over the years, and they're always fascinating. We've had the lady who created, forget exactly, they're on the website. They're like Animal Companion Oracle cards or something like that. And it's like, I don't want to insult anybody, but it's like tarot for dummies.
Okay.
To deal with your animals. So everything on the card to deal with the animals. And it does work. I actually got a tarot card reader that I consider to be more than competent. And I said, take a look at these cards and tell me what you think of them. And she said, we played with them for a couple hours that day alone. And she said, these cards are fun. I mean, they're simple and to the point, but there's not a lot of studying involved, so this is really simple for people who are not willing to spend years learning all the different nuances and meaning. It's written right on the card. There's no memorizing required. As long as you keep your questions simple, these are very relevant cards, and so they were fun to play with. And we used them in more than just animal-related questions because you could apply the same concepts to human questions, Right. Granted, we're not going to be as concerned about fleas or things, but we might be concerned about parasites or skin problems or whatever, So there's some interpretation when you apply it to humans, but as long as you're sticking to the animals, it was like very, very simple, very easy to use for the average person to gain some insight into maybe why things are going the way they are and what the solution could be. I know I consulted all sorts of people about Sissy and Red's conflict. We now know it revolves around Sissy and there is no resolution. She's not going to win because she's not going to be the only dog in the house. She wasn't the first one and she's not going to be the only one. So the only solution is, because she can't be rehomed, nobody wants her. She's too old and whatnot, so it's a case of, if you're not going to put her to sleep, you're going to adapt. And obviously I wasn't going to put her to sleep, and I'm attached to her anyhow. Mm-hmm. So we just adapted our life to Sissy has issues, and we just need to work around them. Because Red wasn't going to give up her role as Queen Bee and Empress of the Universe, and so forth and so on. It was an unsolvable problem. So I consulted trainers, pet psychics, everybody under the sun. Plus, I have a lifetime of working with dogs, professionally and as a hobbyist. It's like, I'm not seeing a solution here because the issue I'm seeing is not solvable. And I guess, maybe in a sense I was psychically right, or right by understanding how dog psyche works. Take your pick.
Right.
But, yeah. So in terms of what else you do, you do the private readings, you do the group readings, you do expansion systems, the life mastery. I do have to ask some more questions about that. The whole life mastery issue is pretty complex. But you know what? It is time for us to go on break, so we're going to hold off on that question. And, folks, we will return in just a few minutes, so stay tuned. And the Dawn of Shades will return with Phyllis King. In the meantime, you can check out our website at www.misogyninetwork.com, and we'll be right back.
Can see
Welcome back to the Dawn of Shades. I'm your host, Gia Scott, with our guest, Phyllis King. And once again, I would like to remind everyone to visit our website, www.exogenynetwork.com. You can sign up for the newsletter, wander around, and explore the website, and let me know what you think of it. And if you are looking to find yourself some links, there's links there to take you to blogs, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. If you're looking to go straight to my blog and find out what I've been up to, it's giascott.wordpress.com. Now, for our topic tonight, it is a fascinating one, as always, and we are fortunate enough to have Phyllis King joining us. So if you would like to ask her a question or make a comment, you can email it to me at giascott@exogenynetwork.com, and I'll pass it on from there. If you're listening on a podcast or think of it after the program is finished, go ahead and send it to me. I'll do my best to get your questions answered. If you're in the virtual auditorium, just put it in the text there, and I'll try to catch it as the screen scrolls. If you want to call in, our number is 504-273-7379. So, just before we went on break, Phyllis, we were talking about your life mastery courses. They seem to somewhat fascinate me. So, could you tell us a little bit more about those?
Okay, sure. Well, you said something in our last conversation in the previous hour about, easy is a relative term, because there's really only a couple of things people have to digest and own in their body, not just their intellect, but their mind, their body, and their heart, to get to life mastery. And one of those is you have to own and identify that you're more than a body, and that the essence of who you are is far superior and has far more power, intention, and purpose than your physical body, your ego state could ever have. And you have to begin to see the world through that perspective. And we've been programmed, trained, culturalized, and conditioned to believe that the physical experience is the dominant experience, and that is what we're supposed to always be reacting to, when it's actually the reverse, that the physical experience is the symptom, if we want to call it that, of the spiritual consciousness. And so that's the first piece to life mastery, getting people back acquainted with what they truly already know. And of course when we talk 2012, that's what this change is all about, that we're already in. It's about reclaiming our spiritual identity. And then from that place, much of it has to do with retraining the perspective. When people talk to me about, this is happening to me, I don't have enough time, I don't have enough money, my relationships all suck, my family's this, whatever, and then it's a process of getting people to make separation from their story and quit identifying with pain and quit identifying with these experiences in the physical as who they are. And that goes back to identifying with that you're a soul in a human body. And then, of course, we just take the specifics down, because we come to the planet to learn and grow. That's what we're here to do. And so then we break it down. How do you identify what it is you're supposed to be learning and growing beyond? The life purpose piece that I'm fascinated with, as is my good friend Vishali. And it really always comes down to, what are you feeling? What are you left with in a situation? Do you feel abandoned? Do you feel rejected? Do you feel disposable? Do you feel whatever it is that you're left with in any situation? That's what you're supposed to be evolving beyond. And too often we're focused on something other than that. People will say, well, in a relationship situation, I know I want someone who's not short. I know I want someone who likes comedies. I know I want someone who likes to go do things or stay home or walk the beach. And those are all things you put on Match.com. They have nothing to do with what is going to attract you to a partner. You're attracted to people who are going to help you heal your own wounds. And so we have to really work on the perspective. And once you get the game and the practice of identifying your story in your life, and you work towards shifting the perspective and identifying with yourself as a soul, as an essence, not just a body, it really becomes much easier to navigate this life experience. And that's the Life Mastery course in a walnut shell.
I find that interesting. You know, a lot of people aren't as fortunate as me. In actuality, Greg is like my best friend. We've been buddies for years. You know, talk to each other through sort of bad relationships and whatnot. So it's really like he's almost my co-writer. You know, we're not the same. We're not the same. Don't get me wrong. He can aggravate the tar out of me. I can drive him absolutely butt shit. You know, but you know, within the realms of tolerable. You know, we don't push each other's buttons too much or anything like that. It's like we're heading the same place. So you know, it works out great for us. And to have somebody that you could share, you know, the good and the bad and the boring and the mundane and the exciting and the crazy and the wacky and the, you know, responsible stuff all together with, hey, that's fantastic. Most people, I don't think, ever have that fortune. I think about past relationships with me. I was the queen of the 6-month relationship. I was good at it. And I really did I had serious commitment issues. I'll admit that too. I had serious commitment issues. You know, the idea of committing to anybody was like, I don't think so. I don't know why it was different with Greg, but it was. And I did. I had commitment issues. I just didn't want to be. I didn't want to be bothered. I didn't want to be tied down. I didn't even want to cohabitate. You know, you need your own space over yonder, someplace away from me. So, you know, now that we're living in small quarters together and we're outnumbered by animals, we still like each other too. That's a good sign.
Nice.
If you can survive small quarters with somebody and you still like each other, I think all couples should have to spend 6 months living in itty-bitty quarters, because you will know if there's any weak spot in that relationship, small quarters will always illustrate it in big neon letters. That's my assessment right there, you know. Cram them in a travel trailer for 6 months, see if they still like each other then.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I think, too, for me, when people are saying, you know, when am I going to meet the perfect person, or when is my soulmate arriving, or whatever, it's really about, can you be yourself? Can you continue to grow and evolve and be who you are in the context of that situation? Does it support you in that? And if you have that going, that's a good relationship. That's a nice, benevolent place to be.
And it is. You know, for me, I was at a point in my life, you know, I already knew there are worse things than being alone. The worst thing of all is to be with somebody I wish you were alone. That's the honest to God truth. Okay, I had a lot of friends who thought, unless they had a guy attached to them, their life had no meaning. I'm like, come on, you know, you can have a whole lot of fun without being that dependent on everybody. A relationship should be the gravy in your life, not the soul-sustaining thing to your life.
Right.
And that's a very difficult concept for people, especially when you're younger, perhaps. But then again, you know, since I had a lifetime issue, nobody took me particularly seriously. But you know, I would say being single most of my life, because this will be my second marriage, so you know, I wasn't single my whole life. But most of my life I was. I learned how to be single really well, and I don't have any regrets about being single, because you know, I lived my life. I had the freedom to do what I wanted to do. I had the freedom to explore the things I wanted to explore. I didn't have the obligations of maintaining a relationship, and especially if you're in a bad relationship, that's a high maintenance thing to have thrown around with. Exactly. Yeah. And you know, a lot of people don't understand that sometimes you're just better off to do your own thing and do your own growing without having to worry about your companion's growth.
Yes.
And
I think we are programmed and culturalized from a young age, at least in Western culture, that this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to grow up and get married and pop out a certain amount of kids and all that by a certain age. And then when it doesn't turn out, we think, well, how did I fail? What did I do wrong? I followed the rule book.
Yeah, I mean, and being a nonconformist and a person with commitment issues, I did things all out of order. I had my kids, and then I got married, and then I got divorced, and now years later, as a 50-year-old woman, I'm getting married again. This time for the right reasons, and that's a good thing, as Martha Stewart would say. And it is, and I feel very, very fortunate to have had the freedom in my life that I've had. That, to be able to explore who I really am. And we were talking about phases in our life earlier. I've gone through many phases in my life. And one of the most important phases that I went through in my 40s was really exploring who am I and what do I want. Because I was free of the responsibilities of children and spouse and whatnot. It was time to look at who I was.
Yeah.
And that was an important journey for me. Not to say that it was always a fun one, because sometimes it's boring and sometimes it's stressful and sometimes it's lonely. It could be lonely too. But there are many worse things than being lonely.
This is true. That's very true. And it seems to me, you say I had commitment issues, whatever, but clearly those were the right choices for you, and they made your life. Yeah,
with hindsight, there was reasons why I just couldn't commit myself into that relationship because it really wasn't right for me. And maybe the cognitive part of me was saying, well, this meets society's norms, blah, 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 blah. And it was like, no, I can't do it. And for me, those were the right decisions at the time. But to everybody else looking at me, it was like quite obvious I had commitment issues, and I knew I did. I did not want to commit. It was a frightening, terrifying, risky thing to do. And maybe it's because I do take commitment serious. So, yeah. Maybe it was a bad thing, maybe it wasn't. Hindsight and being in that moment aren't necessarily going to give you the same sorts of information, because we can see things clearer once we walk past them.
Yes.
Now, on your website, we were talking earlier about psychic development and the fact that you taught classes. And I find that interesting. And I'm sure many, many other people do too. But not all of us live in California, nor can travel to California. And, for some reason I just don't anticipate you booking a location in Pascagoula, Mississippi and teaching a course.
Well, not next week, that's for sure. Never say never. But, this is part of the reason I created the CD series. It's 5 hours of guided instruction. And it gives you the basic tools you can practice in the privacy of your home to learn how to clean out your little universe and make your body safe to do the work. And but the part that you don't get on the CDs is what I call the reading workshop. You get a reading workshop included in the CD so you can see how it goes, how to structure a reading and all that. But there's nothing like being in the classroom setting with me and other students and having me guide you through it. So you have to be pretty self-disciplined, and there does come a point in the course where I say you should really try and do this with a friend, because you just need to have that feedback. But you can get a lot of the tools that I teach, and there's a process in there to help you connect to your primary spirit guide and your primary healing guide, and there's a lot of great stuff in there. And it's a great beginning tool for people who are really trying to get focused and directed on their intuitive development.
Well, I found it interesting, too. It's at an affordable price. For those of you who are listening that are interested in doing such a thing, don't want to invest your life savings, it's only $25.
And I do offer lifetime email support. Anybody who embarks on that journey, I'm always here. I never go away.
Okay, that's a great thing. So for $25, which is, for most people, you're lucky if you can go out for dinner and not spend over $25.
That's right.
So even in Mississippi, and it's a bad dinner, you're still lucky if you don't spend more than $25. It's nearly $20 even if you just go into Waffle House for breakfast, as a matter of fact. So, it's affordable. It's a reasonable way to try it. You've also written a book.
Is people talk to me about, and that I focus on life mastery, relationships, career, success, money, abuse, family relationships, friendships, chaos, wholeness, chaos to wholeness, everything people talk to me about in readings typically. And there are a series of, we'll call them exercises for one to consider so they can kind of see their own story and get to the root of their own core issues about any or every area of their life. So that's my latest book that just came out. And the foreword to that book was written by a good friend of mine named Daniel Brinkley, he was a New York Times best-selling author some years ago when he talked about his near-death experiences, and he's just an amazing person and done some incredible work on the planet ever since that time. So that's in there, but it's a meaty book.
Okay. Well, one thing else I wanted to bring up is, I've had a number of people with budding psychic abilities and whatnot, and the whole honesty question becomes this big boogeyman because they believe that they need to tell everybody everything.
Oh.
And is that all that life? Trying to tell them, no, that's not a good thing. And they're like, oh, yes, being honest is good. No, honest is good, but honesty all the time is not kind or wise.
Here's how I approach a reading. I tell people what's interesting to me, and then I never answer a question unless it's asked, or if someone says, will you tell me blah, 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 I said, I'll answer any question you want me to answer, but make sure you want the answer. So, and the other thing is, people should know that generally speaking, people hate truth tellers. They don't like people to tell truth and spill secrets and tell you how it is. So you don't have to tell everything you see, and that's why I stick to just what people ask. Or, I do this part at the beginning when I look at people's life themes, and I do a 2-year overview of their life. And if something comes up that I feel I need to make them aware of, I will say so. But then I always say, don't substitute my judgment for yours. But telling everything you see and just, I would never do that. Unless, of course, someone had a laundry list of 100 questions and said, answer this, and this. You're just going to get in trouble that way.
And we aren't doing readings, and a lot of times people with budding psychic abilities have very spontaneous experiences. These people haven't necessarily asked for anything.
Right.
And a lot of times these people with these budding psychic abilities will interpret everything as a psychic message, and everything isn't. A lot of times dreams are not precognitive. Like, I had a dream a couple weeks ago about one of my cousin's children, who is now an adult and has a child of his own. They were being in the water and this near drowning experience, and it was this terrible thing. Now, they live in the middle of the desert.
Right.
Why I had a dream about them, I don't know. I haven't even seen this guy since he was like 14 years old. Now, he's on my Facebook friend list, so I know what their baby looks like and what his wife looks like, and when their anniversary is, all that kind of good stuff. But I haven't, physically seen him in well over a decade. I mean, he was a kid last time I saw him. Why was I dreaming about him? Was it a psychic event? No. It probably had some psychic meaning, but not directly pertaining to them.
Right.
It's more a symbolic thing, and trying to explain that a lot of times it's symbology you're looking at, not a psychic precognitive dream.
Right.
Like my
Well,
singing
and I
chickens,
think
that wasn't a precognition. I'm never going to have chickens that sing.
You're right. Well, and I think, as I told you in the earlier hour, how my process evolved is that I started doing a lot of just throwing stuff out there and stimulating people and all that kind of stuff. But then what I teach my students is you can do it how you want to do it. You can do it the way Sylvia Brown does it. You can do it the way, Shar Margolis, whoever you think is fantastic. You can do it that way. But I wanted it to have meaning for me, and I teach my students, have it have meaning for you. It's going to be so much better. That, the reading is as much for the reader as it is for the readee. And, it's a process. We get to release energy and do something I call blow matching pictures and perfect pictures. We release a lot of energy. But so in my readings, I'm really specific about what I want to give people that they can take away that will be really helpful to them beyond the prediction, does he love me, does she love me, will I win the lottery, etc. And so I focus a lot on that. And typically, people like that. Their essence gets a hello. They get spoken to as a spirit, not just as a body. And that being seen, like an avatar, I see you. Do you see? I see them, and I validate that position. And that gives people something to walk away with that lasts a long time. And then all the predictions about whatever are very specific because it brings people into their body and they all of a sudden know what's important to them. Because if you don't drill it down for your readee, they come to the psychic and they expect to just be stimulated. And it is a stimulating experience most of the time. And if you don't rein it in and get them in their body, they're not going to hear a damn thing you say anything anyway. And half an hour after they're gone, they forgot everything you said. So,
well, I know over the years, I've had a number of psychic readings done by various readers, tarot cards and all kinds of other readings, mostly when I was doing research before I even started this program. Because originally this program was supposed to be focusing on, my original intent was I was going to focus on the paranormal phenomena of New Orleans, and there's plenty of it there. But it became a much broader spectrum program long, and all that, is I guess water under the bridge now. But in all those readings that I had, they didn't tell me anything. None of them. And I've had some readings done on the air too, and it's like very vague stuff. But they're future predictions for me. Because now, some of these readings are like 6 years ago. Well, in 6 years, something should have happened that they said was, impending in my life. No.
Ouch.
Well, that's the honest truth. It is nothing. Now, on the other hand, as far as insights into my character and my issues, that's another story. Sometimes they could, and maybe it's a case of they were reflecting back to me what's really there, and I needed to see that. And, and those were useful. Those were worth dealing with the whole reading issue. But as far as the information that they thought they were giving me, it was as useless as a handful of sugar. It just got my head all sticky. It didn't do anything for me as far as being useful or accurate or give me a direction in which to go. Because I had a number of things that I knew, whether you want to say on an intuitive level, a psychic level, a logical level, whatever you want to say, I knew that my time in New Orleans was nearing its end. I had learned what I'd come there to learn.
Right.
And I knew I was going someplace else, but, it's much easier to plan a journey if you know where you're going.
Yes.
It's a lot easier. If you know which direction to leave town in, it's just a much simpler journey, less circling around, less wandering, easier to find your destination and all that. And so I was kind of looking for guidance, which way do I look? I didn't get anything on that. And I actually landed in Pascagoula, Mississippi by default. Or psychic maneuvering, or, whatever.
Yeah.
The lady fate threw things down, so this is the direction I had to go. However you want to put it. I landed in Pascagoula. And is that, something that was predicted? No. I was going to Florida, and I was going to run a tour company. Another one, I was to Colorado, and I was going to run something for women and children.
Okay.
I thought that could be a little frightening. All these strange directions. If I had gone off chasing any of those tangents, I'd have wasted an immense amount of effort. But somehow they just didn't feel right. I didn't do any pursuing of that direction because it didn't suit me. Now, granted, I have a background in tourism. I could run a tour company. But Florida? I really hate heat and humidity. I mean, Pascagoula is enough, I know nothing about Florida. So, I've had some very strange predictions over time.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure that other people have had equally as disappointing psychic readings.
I'm sure.
Well, I'm sure that the people that gave me the readings do it for a living and probably read thousands of people a year and send them all off looking for women and children in Denver or tour buses in Florida, ice cubes in Antarctica or wherever. But, so when a person is looking for direction in their life and they're not sure exactly what they're looking for. A direction. For which direction should I start exploring? Mm-hmm. It seemed like a logical thing because of the fact that I had kind of a vague thing. I knew I was leaving. I knew I was going somewhere. And I knew I was going to change careers again. What, direction should I start looking? And, essentially, I definitely got multiple bum stares. Nobody said anything.
Well, that's one of the things, that's one of the reasons I like to look at what people's life themes are, what their blueprint is. And if a person, if a psychic, doesn't really do that piece, it can be like they could be picking up all kinds of different things from your energy, your past time energy, your past life, or just thoughts or things that are stuck in there from the past. But when I zoom in on who a person is and what they came here to the planet to do, I often get a sense of what their best career choices are, what they're going to do well at, what's going to come easy for them, and what they really want to do. And when I start to say those things to people, often I'll get something like, I kind of was thinking about that, and I've always wanted to do that ever since I was 12. And so I basically validate what's already there for them and help them find their way to their answer. Because that's the other thing about, say, my style as opposed to different people. I try and help people connect to their own information, so they my word for it, so that by the time they get through with the reading, they know what they already know. They know what their direction is. And that's part of the reason I got so fascinated with life themes and life purpose, because once you get that in place, everything else just falls right in. If certain psychics haven't done that piece, I'm not convinced how they can, depending on how good they are at it, how they'll be able to see that. Because it's sort of like it's the cone without the ice cream in it, You gotta have the cone and the ice cream.
Well, like I said, even as you're telling me this, none of this is ringing like who I am. Now, if somebody had said, okay, Gia, you need to explore doing something with leather, like making shoes or making saddles, I said, okay, that rings true. That was something that I thought would be a very interesting career. I would still think it was an interesting career. I'm not sure I'm physically capable of doing that anymore, but it still might be bear checking into. Because I thought it would be interesting to be somebody who fixed shoes and boots and made saddles and whatnot. And I actually did at one point look for someone who had an apprentice program. There's many things that I am interested in, but I've never been interested in being like a counselor, heaven forbid a nurse. working with women and children, that's pretty vague. I mean, that could be almost anything. I might be serving them breakfast, in a fast food joint. I maybe moved to Denver to work at McDonald's. Thank you very much.
Right.
And so that it was too vague for me. And as far as being a tour person, maybe it just didn't connect. I mean, I've been to Florida a number of times. I often go camping in Florida. I have a favorite spot to go camping there. I've tootled around a little bit. There's some interesting things in Florida. But have I ever had a burning desire to move there? No. Of course, if anybody said I would move to Mississippi, I'd have said the same thing. And the first time I was told I was going to move to Louisiana, I said, when pigs fly, obviously pigs flew. But so that maybe that's a prediction that was true. A friend of mine predicted that I would move to New Orleans, and I did, eventually. Not because of their prediction, but maybe in spite of it.
Well, I can never comment on somebody else's reading per se. I can sort of try and troubleshoot, I suppose.
Well, I'm just saying,
one of the things
I teach my students about to try and find out from the psychic, because trying to find one's life purpose or whatnot is a difficult thing, even for somebody who's gotten quite comfortable with self-examination and self-honesty and looking at your own foibles and quirks and qualities too. You've done that self-examination and really still don't have direction.
But most of the time, connecting to life purpose is actually a very joyful experience. We have a lot of programming and preconceived ideas about what it might need to be or feel like. And then comes in the other programming that ties into permission. Are you going to give yourself permission to have that which it is you say you want? So, there's a lot of factors that go into that piece. But, But a lot of people say to me, Phyllis, what you're asking me to do is so hard. And usually it's still the opposite. What you're doing now is so hard. It's just you've normalized your condition to believe that this is how it is.
So, I've done in my life, I've done what's expected of me, okay? That was hard. Doing what was expected of me, that I was very poorly to. Pretending to be that person for years at a time. It's like you're an actor who never gets to step out of your role.
Yes.
You're miserable. You make everybody around you miserable because you were so poorly suited. This is not who I am. I don't like this person. I don't like this life. I don't like anything about it. And, eventually, you do like I did, and you reach a point and you say, you know what? Not only do I not like it, nobody around me likes it either. Because I'm not who I'm supposed to be. Yeah, it's the same people that were telling you this is who you need to be don't like it when that's who you are. And so gradually, and then again, the 40 thing, you're an empty nester and all of a sudden you're confronted with, who am I? It was at that moment that I realized I did not know how to want something for myself.
Wow. Huge.
My life had been focused around taking care of other people's needs, doing what needed to be done, and not even thinking about what I needed, other than, okay, I need some sleep, or I need some downtime, or I just need an hour for me, and go hide in the bathroom, beyond those limited I wants, I didn't know how to want something for me. What did I want out of life? I had no idea. That's partly what finally drove me to New Orleans. Was, I'm sitting in, I've got a perfectly good job that I actually enjoyed. I had friends that I actually liked. I had a family nearby. I had this life that stretched out in front of me as straight and boring as a road across the flats of Kansas. And I could see exactly 20 years from now. Now, once upon a time, many, many moons before, I had thought that I wanted to pick a fenced life, the Mrs. Cleaver sort of thing, where you knew what you'd be doing Tuesday, 10 years from now, what you'd be serving for dinner. I was wrong, because when I looked at that highway of life stretched out in front of me and said, it's never going to be any better, this is all there's ever going to be, I said, oh, no. I need more of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, talk about culture shock. Beverly Hillbillies didn't have much on me. At least I knew what the best toilet was. Yeah,
I love Beverly Hillbillies.
Well, I do too. And actually, if you listen to the dialogue, there's some very important social messages being delivered in a comedic form. But Beverly Hillbillies aside, the whole comedic thing of being from the sticks and suddenly arrive in a relatively civilized and sophisticated area. Yeah. My dog is a formerly feral dog. Dog had an easier time adapting than me, I think. And I can remember the first time we walked down a sidewalk. She's about to have a cow because we're supposed to be skulking in the bushes. And, even hick me realized that if you go around the block circling and speaking through people's bushes in their yards, people are going to think we're up to something. No, we can't do that. We got to walk on the sidewalk, dog. But yeah, she actually adapted quicker and probably more easily than I did. And she was a great help to me adapting to living in an apartment or in a village with no paved roads and whatnot. Right, a little tiny village not far from a small town. No paved roads, no street lights. Mail was delivered out on the paved road. School buses, that was out there too. 6 miles to town, and so forth and so on. I guess they have paved roads now and street lights, but back then they didn't. And so it was a big change in lifestyle to move to an apartment complex where 5,000-6,000 people lived, and deal with all that. And it provided me with a chance to turn my Christmas tree upside down and see things from a different perspective, learn how to want, learn how to do things, and so forth and so on.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was definitely an interesting time in my life, and I learned I was a far more powerful person than I ever dreamed I was.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, that's always a good lesson to learn, and most of us need to learn it. Now, before we are winding down to the end of our hour, you want to make sure and tell everybody where to find your website, how to email you, where they can go to get your book and your CD and all that kind of fun stuff.
Thank you. Well, if you can remember my name, Phyllis King, spells 1S, phyllisking.com is my website. And I have a learning center with lots of articles and free things, free 30-day plans. I have lots of audio and video for different presentations. I have a nice free gift, Making the Connection to Your Abundance, which is one of my favorite prosperity discussions. People like that a lot. I have an online store. I have my own radio show that happens on Tuesdays, noon to 1. You can listen directly from my website if you're interested. And if you want to find out where I am, what I'm doing, it's all on phyllisking.com.
And, folks, it is a very, very nicely laid out website. It's easy to navigate around, see what there is to see, and whatnot. And if you forget our website, if you go to exogenynetwork.com, you can see her name over on the list. If you forget her name even, if you look up today's date, that will get you her name, and you can get the link to go to the webpage, gives her a webpage there, and a little bit about Phyllis as well. So it makes it nice and simple. So do you have any events coming up in the next few months?
I do, and by the way, you can also Google Common Sense Psychic, that way to find me. Let's see, I have Psychic Development class in the San Francisco Bay Area beginning a week from Saturday. I have a New Life Mastery course in July, a week from Sunday. In August, I'll be in Alameda, California, the Home of Truth with Dr. Margaret Cochran and other events later in the year. But if you visit the website, you'll find out where I am. I'm not traveling out of state for the rest of the year, so everything's in California. But next year I'll travel to probably the Pacific Northwest and back to New York.
I mean, you should consider the Gulf Coast, too. I can see you in Pascagoula.
I can easily see myself there, too, but unlike you, I still have small children, and I don't like to be too far away from them for long.
Yeah, I can understand that. I remember when my own kids were small, I made many choices based on the fact that I was a parent, and that was my first job.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
We'll do that.
You know the drill.
I think that's part of the reason that many of us don't start exploring who we are until we're our 40s, is because our first priority as women is often our children.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us, we set aside who am I for giving them their wings. I have to say, I'm very proud of my daughter. I think she's an absolutely wonderful person. She's got a set of wings. And it's not too terribly often I want to take a baseball bat and apply sense, but it does still happen. She's not 30 yet, you know?
Yeah. Well, I had got my first daughter when I was, my first child when I was 43. So I started late in life. I spent a lot of time playing, doing my thing. And I am now, I'm 52, and I have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. So there you go.
You're a busy lady.
Yes,
You're a busy lady. Yeah.
And I make cookies.
I gave up cookies. I figured I'll take up cookies again when my granddaughter is old enough to care.
There you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
She's working on the concept of getting food from the tray to her mouth yet. So
nice.
she's actually a preemie, so she does still lag behind in some things. She's still working on catching up. But yeah, she was a very tiny thing at just over 4 pounds, but she's doing beautifully now.
Nice.
And she's showing her own personality now. And
beautiful.
Oh boy, she's got a mind of her own.
Yeah, what's her first name?
Her first name's Aurora.
Oh my. Wow. What a powerful name. Wow.
She's
takes a lot just to say it. Aurora.
I always sister too. Yeah, she's got that kind of subtle inner fire, you might say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So. But folks, we have
she will be a wonderful handful.
Oh yeah. I kept telling her mom to name her Revenge.
So Revenge, Aurora, I think they're kind of the same.
Yeah. You've been a fantastic guest. I've had a ball with you. I'm going to have to bring you back again. Folks,
great, Gia. Thanks so much.
Well, we've had a lot of fun. I hope everyone has enjoyed the program tonight and that you found it provided you all with plenty of food for thought and more illumination for your personal journey towards truth. Join us again next Tuesday, and we'll bring you along for another episode of the Dawn of Shades. And I know it's sure to be another conversation as well. With that, we are out of time. I'm your host, Gia Scott, and good night.